Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs and share our experience to hopefully help you have your best game. So how's the house with 50% more person in there?
It's been fine for a week. So I don't think there will be any issues.
No, I don't think so. Are they around?
Yeah, they're both downstairs. They're waiting on me for food.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll be quick then. All right. Well, hello, James. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. Seeing you remotely now is a little, well, I wouldn't say weird, but it's like you were here and then you were gone and then we're busy and now we're seeing each other remotely again.
You know, it's one of those things that it throws off the quote unquote normal.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it was a bummer that we couldn't record while you were here in town, but
it was a busy week.
Yes, it was. Christmas and a wedding made for a very busy week. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, well, I don't want to get too much in the way of the ladies who are in your house right now who want food before too long. So we should get right to it. Obviously, you haven't done any gaming, nor have I. But one of the things that Chris and I used to do on the show was at the beginning of each year, we would talk about like what are our goals, hopes, dreams, aspirations. What do we want to do for the coming or the new calendar year? So I thought that might be cool because I've got some things and I'm sure you've got some things. I know we talked about this stuff. So that's what we're going to do today. Just some goals and ideas for 2026 in gaming. Would you like to start? Do you have a goal, a hope?
Well, I have two very specific, easy goals to start right now. And I'm going to say this is my completion goal for the start of the year. And that's what we have two campaigns that we're actually finally going to finish our Curse of Strahd campaign that I talked about. We tabled in an episode forever ago. But we're actually going to finish that this February. So we're picking it back up from where it's been tabled, and it'll be another campaign that I will be able to say like we've actually successfully started, tabled, come back to, and then completed. So that's going to be finished. And then I also would like to complete our story for Traveler that I'm doing with the group of guys in our Safari World game, because that has become a bear to try to schedule because people's lives have changed a lot since we started doing that a few months ago. So that's one of my big goals, are to complete the one campaign and the adventure path of Safari World. So those are kind of like my completion goals that I want to finish those hopefully within the first 3 months of the year. That's my goal.
Those are worthy. And I think you and I, we coined a term for this. I don't know if we coined it, we just used it. But your Curse of Strahd has been shelved.
Correct.
Pull that thing off the shelf and finish it. Yeah, that'll feel good. That'll feel good. Now, with the Traveler campaign, is your goal to, finish the story arc that you were in and then maybe continue with something else, maybe with some different, not necessarily different, like a whole different group, but maybe some of the people won't be part of the group moving forward just because of scheduling issues?
Correct. So our plan is to finish Safari World and then reevaluate the party, because there are two players that it looks like, due to life circumstances, are not going to be able to be regular players at the very least. Like, they have their characters, so they can come back whenever they want, but it will have to be less common meetings for them. But that would also allow our party to shrink from the 6 players that it is currently back down to the standard 4. So it actually wouldn't be a bad thing for that, because it makes my planning a little bit easier. But yeah, that's the plan, is not to be done with Traveler, just to reevaluate. Maybe someone else will have something come up and we'll have to reevaluate how that looks. But it'll help me redefine what the consistent party looks like and be able to build from there, because they're all very different characters with very different skills. So that's something that's important for me to think about going into adventures, especially now that I have all of those extra Black Book Traveler adventures to use, and be like, okay, well, it's very different when I have a Marine versus a Navy pilot. Those are different characters. So I have to be able to plan around that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And too, with Traveler, depending on the type of, yeah, the general type of story that you're running, having two players whose characters disappear is not a killer. Obviously, I actually think reducing the player group size from 6 to 4 makes it more manageable. Makes it more manageable at the table, but it also makes it easier to plan depending on which backgrounds leave, which career areas leave. And you can just, maybe you can tighten the focus, but there's nothing to say that those other characters can't pop up somewhere. And so that's if they are travelers with the double L, that is knocking around from job to job and moving around from system to system. You could even use those two one or two of them as NPCs periodically that could feed the party information about jobs or things like that. So yeah, the door's wide open for that. That's cool. I think that's a good pair of, yeah, you want to finish some stuff and be done with it so that you can then move to a next chapter. My first goal is to happily be a player for a month or two. So we
so much fun. You don't get to do it very often when you're GM all the time.
I know, and the problem is that like anything, it's something that you have to. If you haven't played for a really long time, if you're the forever GM and you're listening to this, I have found that because I go very long stretches without playing, that it takes some time to get back into playing. Like I have to acclimate back to it. And so what's been nice is I've had the last few weeks off from any gaming whatsoever. But yeah, we finished Star Trek. That is done. That is not shelved. That is boxed. And my buddy John is going to run, he was saying 3 or 4 weeks. I'd say it might go 5 or 6, just depending on how the story shakes out.
Right.
We're going to play Cyberpunk Red. Which I've run a handful of times, and I've played, I think, twice, at least once.
I'm really looking forward to hearing about this because I'm very interested in Cyberpunk Red.
It's super easy system, and yeah, we can talk about that in an episode later. I mean, anyway, I won't jump off that cliff right now, but there are 4 of us. We already picked our roles, that is like our classes or, professions or whatever. And so we did that before Christmas, actually at the beginning of our last session. So he's been planning around the roles that we chose so that he can build some cool adventures that are stories unto themselves, but form an arc a bit. And then we'll just, I'm betting probably like I said, maybe 5 or 6 sessions or so, maybe until the end of February, depending. It would be good for me to not run for 2 reasons. One, it gives me time to plan for the Pathfinder Eberron campaign that I will start when we're finished with this. And also, it's just a way to flex different muscles and stretch in different ways. And much like a farm field being like laying fallow for a period of time, I think this will help my GMing when I get back to it. So that's my first. That's not just a goal. That is a plan right now. That is something we are going to do. And my piece of it is I want to relax into it so that I am happy as a player. I'm really looking forward to it, and that we stretch it out for a decent amount of time so we can get some story out of it. What else have you got? I have more. But
yeah, I also have a plan. So this is going back to my solo game that I play with my friend. The plan is we are going to finish out the adventure that he is in Traveler. And because the holiday months have been very hectic and we haven't had the chance to play a lot, he has managed to, I would say, catch back up with the D&D solo campaign that we were playing, to the point where he's like, I have a lot of stuff built that we probably should work through like at least a little bit before I get too far ahead. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick that back up from shelving and then shelve the Traveler solo campaign so I can work on more planning because I haven't gotten any further than the adventure we're in right now. So hopefully we'll have that done late January, early February. He's flying through this adventure way faster than the last one, so I don't know exactly how long it's going to take, but this is my definite plan is we're going to make that swap. While I plan more Traveler, we'll play through the Dungeons and Dragons that he has, and then we'll revisit and go, are we going to shelve this again and do something completely different? Are we just going to make the swap again back to Traveler and go from there? But that is the plan going forward. That should be relatively soon that we'll have that. And that's the one that is definitely for sure. We kind of have a time frame and that will happen.
That's cool because again, it's like you and I are doing the same kind of thing right here. Is that we're deliberately doing something different, taking the B to the A or something like that in order to do the good that's there and have the fun that's there, but also recharge our batteries and give us time to build. So the building that I'm doing, I think I mentioned this. We talk about the Pathfinder Eberron that I'm doing? Yeah, we
yes,
did.
we
Okay.
did.
Yeah. So I've got those. I have the 3 books 1 through 3 of that adventure, and I've just been reading them. Reading them and rereading and making notes and outlines and doing all the things that we said are good to do. And I've just been thinking about them. And now, after we start with Red this weekend, I'm going to work out something of a schedule just to keep myself honest and on task. So I'm actually taking this time and using the creative energy from Red to help spur me on with that. Now, my goal is that after we play Red for some period of time, we'll go to this, gonna make characters, do a session 0, all that good stuff, and then dive right into this. And I don't know, I don't really know how long, but the 3 books and with a little bit of padding, like additional story stuff that I'm making up, this is going to run a couple of months. Like if we start this by the end of February, by the time it starts to get miserably hot in my garage by like June, I think that we could be reaching the end of it or somewhere in there. So that's my second big thing is that I will be ready for that and jazzed and excited about that. I am now, I have been. So that's my other big thing. My next thing is not necessarily, well, it's related to the table. I want to paint more minis this year. I have not a lot, but I have some that I've picked up. I mainly get like random like monsters and stuff that I figure I'll use during a session. And so I want to, and I have some terrain things. Like I have like, tables and chairs and a torture chamber and junk like that, just things to use. And, yeah, I have to, it's so silly, but I have to remind myself that I enjoy in the right circumstances sitting down and painting these things. Like I just finished an Otyugh and I'm really happy with how the little garbage monster turned out. Now I have to wait a little bit because if I throw it at first level characters, it will kill them. But
not something you want to throw at a level 1 party.
No, maybe I'll throw it at them, but I'll just tell them before that session. Remember, you can run away. And I'll put them in circumstances where they can run away. Maybe I'll do that. But yeah, I don't know what it is, but I get I forget that I really do enjoy taking the time to paint the things, and I want to do that. I have some terrain that I want to build that I want to use with the Pathfinder story, and I'm going to paint some monster minis just to enhance it. And for me, I don't know. I mean, maybe I can't do this. I can't just like pick up minis or build terrain just cause. I have to build it for something I'm going to run. And so now that I have this and I'm reading through the books and thinking about like, oh, what would this be? What kind of cool terrain? So then I want to go take my XPS foam and build terrain. So that's another goal to accompany gaming at the table and enhance the gaming at the table is some terrain and minis.
Great. That's what I'm slightly different. I pick up minis because I've played a lot. So you play a lot of different characters, you pick up a lot of different minis, and they just sit there. And then your GM goes, "Hey, do you remember that you had this character that you played? Can I borrow that mini for this?" But yeah, no, I have one more thing. So I've kind of like broken them up into parts. So I have like the things I want to complete, the things that I'm swapping, like we're swapping these so we can plan. But then I have my long-term planning that I'm working on. This is kind of the last thing that I've thought about for this year that I really want to do is I am building my own traveler universe, just kind of something small. I'm going to do one sector and plan it out because I am having a really difficult time with the traveler universe itself. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but because it's gigantic. And I have the kind of players that go, I want to go all the way over there and do that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, if I make it a little bit smaller, all the way over there is much more reasonable for us to do. So I'm planning out that. And I kickstarted Cohorts Cthulhu. And I really enjoy the system and I really enjoy the setting and I don't like their story. So there's some stuff I want to rebuild with that and kind of some basic world building things that I'm not a huge fan of because I studied ancient history in my undergraduate program. So that's something I'm like, I really want to change. It's not that anything's bad, just like, oh, they had a really good opportunity to do this, and I really want to do this instead of what they did. So my plan, like long term, are I'm going to build these two into settings and stories that I really am going to enjoy running with my players.
Is the plan then perhaps later this year you would run that? You would rope some
My
people in?
hope, yeah, my hope is depending on how the Traveler games go that I'm playing. If people really love what we're playing right now, I will just continue to work within the Traveler universe that's already there. But if it starts to get a little bit too samey or it's a little hard to manage their desire to jump off hundreds of star systems away that doesn't really work very well for my understanding of the game yet. My goal is to have one of those two systems prepared to move into. So either the continuing Traveler, but changing the world that we're playing in, or have Cohorts Cthulhu ready for us to jump into as something different because most of my players have tried 2D20 through Conan and they really enjoyed it. So I'm like, if I can change this to something that we are all interested in, hence the Roman Empire, I can get the guys to try that, and it would be a nice thing for us to be able to switch into. And I paid for it, so I'd like to try it at some point. So my goal, Cohorts Cthulhu, I think I could have done fairly quickly because there's very little I need to change about it in order for it to work. The Traveler sector is a little bit more intense because there's a lot of planning you have to do when you're building completely, like I'm not building completely from scratch, but it's basically from scratch just with world creation rules. So that'll take a little bit more time. But I think with Cohorts Cthulhu, I can probably have that completely ready to go by August at the latest. So with Traveler, it might take longer, but it depends on what my life looks like, and things are always crazy. So we'll see if I can get both of them done in the year, or I'll have one of them done and the other one most of the way done. We'll have to see.
You know what's cool though, given all those the digital copies of the little black books that you just picked up, you have a silly amount of Traveler world content, setting content, rules, and even adventures. So you have a ton of stuff that you could use, you could be inspired by, you could riff on, or you can just do your own thing. You got a ton of that. And you have essentially the same sort of thing, albeit with, smaller page count with cohorts. And then you have this massive adjunct of all the stuff that's in your head. And also what's really cool is that the players that you would involve in that have that in their head too. So that would be that's cool. I'm really interested to know like what we can talk about in another episode. Like what do you like about it? What are you going to change about it? That's actually, I think that'd be a cool episode. Another cool episode I think would be looking at your Traveler sector creation. Like what are you going to do in terms of putting your own stamp on and deviating from classic Traveler or Traveler universe as as presented in the books. Because I mean, Traveller originally was just a science fiction rules set that it even said like, if you want lightsaber or laser swords and whatever and space magic, you can do that. So you could potentially do just about anything with it. Um, my last goal for this year with this Pathfinder thing, I have the 3 books. I have some things that in general, that I'd like to add to it, but I really want to plan it and not make it rigid, but plan it to be that. So this is not an open-ended campaign. It is this thing. It is this story. It is this arc. It's this trilogy of books that make up this portion of this adventure path that I think is most functional. And it's set in Eberron. And that's how I'm going to reiterate that to my players. That's how, I don't want at the end of this my players to go, okay, now let's take our 8th or 9th or 10th level Pathfinder characters and let's keep doing, Pathfindering in Eberron. No. I would be happy to, I think I'd be happy at this point to do some other Eberron stuff because I just love the world so much. But yeah, my goal is to run this thing as just that. And then
you want it to be a self-contained A to B story, but not a railroad. You want it to be like, we are going from this point, and then this is the definite ending point of we have succeeded in this story. We have a bookend, but it's not defined on exactly how you'll get there.
And if they're digging Eberron, and we say, okay, let's start somewhere else. Let's dial it back, and then potentially, and I've done this before, when we did Kingmaker eons ago, I actually ran a couple of short parallel story arcs. Like after the kingdom they were building was a few years old and was settled and growing, like we on a couple of occasions had them play different characters who were operating within that. And it was really cool because then they could look at their creation differently than being at the head of it. And so, I could see playing a different Eberron adventure and having these events, like these are things they read about in the Korenberg Chronicle, or the Sharn Inquisitive, which are some of the newspapers that are out there. I could see doing that.
That is one of the most fun things I've ever had in a world that someone's created. That in my campaign that I'm in for the solo campaign, the D&D version, that's something that's happened. We played in a very, very early with this guy as GM, just a one shot. And then now that I'm playing in my game with him, stories of what happened there have made their way to where my character is. It's like, oh, that was us like 5 years ago. That's so cool. So when players have that opportunity, it's so much fun to be like, I know what's going on. My character doesn't, but I know what's happening, which is great.
Yeah, we actually years ago, I ran a session of Pathfinder at our local game convention that it was presented as like an action session, that you were like you're a part of a patrol and you see the invading army and you have to like evade the invading army and get the news of the invasion back to your headquarters so you can try to save part of the kingdom. And I had, if I remember correctly, I think I had 1 or 2 players in that who were players in my regular campaign, and that was parallel to things they had done like a month or 2 before. And they're like, this is so cool because they saw it from a different perspective. They could play out different elements of that world that they had been a party to building. So that's and like I said, I know Eberron lore so well that I think I could do some with that. That's another thing we should talk about. I need to sell you on that setting.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, that's it. That's what I've got. I don't have like a crazy list of things. I don't have a crazy list. I want to play for a while. I want to plan for, and then I want to complete this. I think, and then the painting stuff and building stuff is hopefully a slow burn throughout the year. The actual at the table and planning for the table stuff really is probably the first half, or maybe a little more than the first half of this year. and I'll just be open to opportunities and options after that.
Yeah, and that's sometimes a small list is better because then you're not getting overwhelmed with all the things that you thought you wanted to do when things change 6 months in.
Yeah. Yeah, and you feel committed to something, and you don't remember the sunk cost fallacy of like, well, I planned for this and I'm going to keep planning for it, damn it. So yeah.
Yep.
All right. Dear listeners, what are your plans for this year? How do you go about thinking about? Do you even go about thinking about? I mean, this is like a kind of a New Year's game resolution sort of thing. Do you even go about doing that? Do you approach a new year that way, or not? I'd be really curious to get your feedback on this. So tell us what you think. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes.